guys, welcome back to Good Grains and to the final week of Thanksgiving recipes. Today we are making stuffing, and your first thought is probably how exactly are we making stuffing? Isn't that have bread in it? So what I actually did earlier this week, I posted on the blog a recipe for a herb bread for this stuffing. So this is kind of what it looks like. I still have it in the pan. If you read the directions, make the herb bread the night before you're going to make the stuffing and leave it out overnight. And now the reason for that is because you want it to be very dry. You kind of want it to mimic when you make stuffing, where you use, you know, a couple day old bread or bread that you kind of toast in the oven before you use it. So this is kind of going to be the star of our show, is this herb bread. So check out the blog for that recipe. We have some other classic stuffing ingredients. So we have some celery and onion that we're going to use. And then we also have, this is some sausage. It's a little over a half pound or so of sausage. You can use any sausage that you have in the house. That's just plain bulk sausage. For our seasonings, we have, this is some fresh, it's like falling, some fresh sage. It's kind of the last of what I have from my garden. A little bit of rosemary and some garlic. And then to kind of help bind everything together, we are going to use an egg and then some broth. Now this is just some broth that I have left over. You can definitely use some homemade stock. If you don't have any of those, you can, you know, certainly substitute water. We have some kosher salt and some cracked black pepper. If you would rather use white pepper, you can certainly use that for that. And we're going to use some olive oil, just kind of drizzle it over the top, and also use that. So let's first saute our vegetables. Okay, so we have a pan over about medium heat or so, and the first thing we are going to do is cook our sausage. So you can just take the sausage and kind of, this is again where a wooden spoon comes in handy, just kind of break it up a little bit. And the extra fat that comes out of the sausage is what we are going to use to cook our onions and celery and everything like that. So you can just kind of break this up and then allow it to cook for a couple minutes. Just kind of keep an eye on it. You definitely want to make sure that your sausage does not burn, but you do want to cook your sausage almost thoroughly, just because the sausage has fat, a decent amount of fat in it, it's not going to dry out. But you want to make sure to render some of that so that we can cook the vegetables. Okay, so it's taken about, say, 3 to 4 minutes to get the sausage to be about here. So what we are going to do is we are going to add it to our mixing bowl, and then we can saute the vegetables. So let me show you, this is the herb bread. I've just cubed it into, I don't know, about 1/2-inch cubes or so. And when you feel the bread, it's definitely on the slightly drier side. It's not like chalky or anything like that, but it's definitely not super moist. I mean, these are pretty dense cubes of bread. So we can add our sausage in with the bread. And then we can add about a tablespoon or so of extra oil to the fat that we can saute our vegetables. So this is our onion and our celery that I chopped pretty finely, and then we have our garlic. We're going to add this closer to the end. First we want to cook our celery and our onion. So we can add these to the pan. And I turned the heat up just a tiny bit. Now you can take the spoon and kind of scrape up as best as you can some of the extra sausage bits that were left on the bottom. They're not all gonna come up. You might need to use a little bit of the broth to get the rest of it up, but you can at least kind of start going around and scraping up that extra flavor to mesh with the vegetables. So we're going gonna cook this for about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes that these onions and celery have been cooking. I used a little bit of the broth to kind of help loosen all of the browned bits that were up off the bottom. So we can add in our garlic for the last couple minutes of cooking for these. And then while that continues to lightly brown, we can prepare the rest of our ingredients. So I have my egg and just the rest of my broth. And so we can crack the egg into the broth. And then just kind of whisk this together. And then with our stuffing mixture that we're building, we can add in, this is the sage and the rosemary that I kind of chopped up. This doesn't look like a ton of herbs, but there's already herbs in the bread itself. And so we're not going overboard with the added herbs. So we can add that in. And then we can add in some salt, kosher salt, and then also some cracked black pepper. And then I'm going to add in approximately a tablespoon worth of olive oil. And we can begin to mix this all together. It doesn't need to be thoroughly mixed because we still have our celery and onion and garlic to add. We can kind of toss that together. Let's make sure this isn't going to start burning. And then you can prepare a pan. This is a casserole dish that actually my grandma used to use to make stuffing every single year, at least that I can remember. So I just drizzled some olive oil and then I kind of just spin it around to make sure it gets everywhere. You can also use your hands to make sure it gets all the way up the sides, but you want to make sure you have a casserole dish that you can cover to kind of keep warm, and then when we cook it in the oven, we're just going to pull the lid off for the last, say, 5 to 7 minutes so that it gets nice and kind of crunchy on the top, but it's still nice and moist underneath. So once you have that prepared, I think our onions and everything are done. So we can turn that off. And let me push this back. And then we can add our vegetables into the bowl as well. And then we can add, this is our egg with our broth. And I don't even really bother to temper the egg with this mixture because luckily the bread is nice and cool. So you only really have the sausage and the vegetables that are warm. So you kind of want to lightly toss this together. Don't toss it too vigorously just because otherwise you're going to end up breaking up the bread and it's going to become like mush. So just as best as you can, kind of pull from underneath. Once everything looks like it's pretty well mixed, you can grab your pan and you can pour your stuffing mixture into your pan. And now we are going to put the lid on and place this into a 350-degree oven for about 25 minutes. And then you can turn up the oven temperature either to broil or to 400 degrees, pull the lid off and let it cook for another, say, 5 to 7 minutes to kind of get the top nice and crusty, and then it is ready to serve. So that wraps up the final week of Thanksgiving recipes. I hope one of these recipes will grace your Thanksgiving table. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Bye.